Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. Niccolò Machiavelli, the prince. They told you caring was strength. They told you being open, emotional, and vulnerable made you noble. They told you that in showing your wounds, you would find healing. But Machiavelli would laugh at this, because in reality, every tear you shed in public, every over-explanation you give, every desperate attempt to prove yourself, becomes nothing but ammunition for those who want to control you. The truth is brutal. The more you care, the more predictable you become. And predictability is weakness, the trap of caring. From the time you were a child, you were conditioned to care what others think. Parents, teachers, peers, they all drilled into you that approval was the ultimate prize. You learned to raise your hand for permission, to explain yourself when challenged, to apologize when you weren't even wrong. And in doing so, you surrendered your power. Because once people know what gets to you, they own you. That's the first lesson Machiavelli understood, and one that most people never learn. Caring is not compassion. Caring is a leash. Predictability is control. Think about it. When people know you'll react to disrespect, they disrespect you to control your reaction. When they know you'll chase validation, they withhold it to keep you running after them. When they know you can't stand silence, they starve you of words until you break. Every sigh you release, every angry text you type, every emotional plea, it all makes you easier to read, easier to corner, easier to manipulate. You become a book with no locked pages, and anyone with the patience to skim your chapters can use your very soul against you. Machiavelli didn't live that way. He wasn't a man of feelings, he was a man of leverage, and leverage begins where predictability ends. The Machiavellian countermove. Imagine two men. One is easily provoked, always defending himself, always proving himself, always reacting. The other says nothing. He watches. He doesn't flinch when mocked. He doesn't over-explain when challenged. He doesn't care if you misunderstand him. Which man do you fear more? The answer is obvious. The unreadable man always holds the advantage. That is the Machiavellian principle. The one who doesn't flinch wins. The one who doesn't chase attracts. The one who doesn't care controls. Your silence is not weakness. It is weaponry. Modern example, business. Look at negotiations in business. The predictable man is the one who panics when silence falls across the table. He blurts out discounts. He reveals his bottom line. He bends. But the Machiavellian strategist? He sits in silence. He watches the others squirm. He makes them reveal their hand, not because he asked, but because he didn't. The one who speaks less always learns more. Modern example, relationships, or consider relationships. When you care too much, you text desperately. You explain your feelings over and over. You beg to be understood. And what happens? The other person loses respect. They see you as predictable. They see you as easy to control. But the Machiavellian mind doesn't play that game. He understands that the one who can walk away without a word is the one who holds the frame. When you stop reacting, you stop being controlled. The psychology of silence. Psychologists know this truth well. People crave reactions. Reactions confirm their power over you. If they can get you angry, they feel strong. If they can make you explain, they feel dominant. But when you give them nothing, silence backed by indifference, that's when they unravel. They start overthinking. They start doubting. They start fearing. Because in the absence of your reaction, their mind becomes their enemy. And that is where your power lives. A challenge to you. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, who controls you right now? Whose opinion makes you anxious? Whose approval do you chase? Whose silence makes you panic? Now imagine cutting those strings. Imagine no longer reacting to their disrespect, no longer chasing their validation, no longer caring if they approve or not. That version of you The unreadable, unshakable you, that is the Machiavellian version. Write this down, say it out loud, burn it into your mind. My silence is my power. Because once you stop being predictable, you stop being usable. The ruthless reality. This is the ruthless truth. Caring makes you predictable. Predictability makes you weak, and weakness invites exploitation. The cold art of not caring isn't about cruelty. It's about strategy. It's about choosing silence where others scream. It's about walking away where others chase. It's about watching them try to provoke you and giving them nothing. And in that nothing, you become untouchable. This is only the beginning. Because once you learn to cut predictability from your life, you are ready for the second Machiavellian law of coldness. Emotional investment is the setup for manipulation. Do you think Machiavelli was right, or was he too ruthless? Leave your thoughts below. A wise ruler ought never to keep faith when by doing so it would be against his interest. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Prince Emotional Investment, the bait of manipulation. Here's the cruel truth most people never learn. The moment you are emotionally invested, you are vulnerable. Why? Because emotion kills logic. Think about the last time you were swept up in emotion, maybe in love, in rage, in desperation. Did you act strategically, or did you act impulsively? Did you weigh options carefully, or did you justify red flags because you felt something? That is the setup. Manipulators know this. They rush to get you attached. They praise you too quickly. They share secrets too soon. They show vulnerability, not because they trust you, but because they want you to trust them. It's a trap, and the moment you take the bait, you stop thinking like a strategist and start thinking like a servant to your emotions. The Machiavellian warning. Machiavelli himself wrote, "A ruler must know how to be both man and beast. Man, when logic is required. Beast, when ruthlessness is necessary." He understood that emotions cloud judgment, that the one who rules cannot afford to act from his feelings, but must instead wield them as tools. The throne is not defended by tears, it is defended by detachment. Today, your throne is your mind, your purpose, your stability, and you protect it not by being open or available, but by removing emotional bait from your world. Modern example, love and the setup. Consider the man who falls too quickly in love. Within weeks, he is already pouring his heart out, planning his life around someone he barely knows. He's not in love with the person, he's in love with the feeling. And that's why he becomes easy prey. The moment the other person pulls away, he panics, he explains, he begs, he justifies their neglect because he's addicted to the feeling of attachment. What does this reveal? It reveals weakness, it reveals desperation, it reveals predictability. And once someone sees that they can toy with your emotions, the game is no longer equal. Modern example, business and politics. In politics, this game is played constantly. Politicians use emotional language, stirring up fear, anger, hope, and outrage, not to inform, but to control. Once the people are emotionally invested, they stop questioning policies. They stop checking facts. They start reacting instead of reasoning. In business, emotional investment blinds leaders. A CEO who becomes too emotionally attached to a failing project will keep funding it, defending it, excusing it, because abandoning it feels like failure. Meanwhile, the Machiavellian competitor cuts their losses coldly, strategically, and moves ahead. Emotion is not strength. Emotion is a leash. The Machiavellian countermove, strategic indifference. So, what is the antidote? Indifference. Indifference is not weakness. Indifference is not apathy. Indifference is power carefully concealed. When you are indifferent, you are not numb. You are selective. You choose who earns your reaction. You choose where your energy goes. You choose which battles are worthy of your time. Most people bleed energy for anyone and everyone, every insult, every shift in tone, every subtle sign of disapproval. But the Machiavellian strategist doesn't react to every provocation. He doesn't chase explanations. He doesn't waste energy proving himself. He remains silent, and in that silence, he becomes untouchable. The psychology of indifference. Here's what most people don't understand. Humans are addicted to reactions. They expect to provoke anger, guilt, defense, or fear. That's the script society has taught them. But when you break that script, when you remain calm, unmoved, indifferent, it unsettles people. They start to overthink. They start to doubt. They start to lose balance. Indifference is not just self-protection, it is psychological warfare, because when you give nothing, they unravel. And while they unravel, you rise. Historical example. Roman emperors consider Marcus Aurelius the philosopher king. He ruled Rome during times of war and plague. Yet his enemies often complained that he was unreadable. They couldn't figure out what provoked him, what flattered him, what he needed from them. That unreadability was his shield. His indifference to their praise or insults left them powerless. Or look at Machiavelli's own Florence, where rulers who showed too much passion, too much emotion, were always the ones overthrown first. The rulers who lasted were the ones who stayed cold, strategic, unreadable. Modern analogy, social media. Even on social media, indifference is power. People thrive on outrage, on drama, on attention. The ones who react, who post impulsively, who respond emotionally, are the ones who lose control of their image. But the silent observer, the one who doesn't bite the bait, that's the one who gains mystique, respect, even fear. Your enemies expect you to shout. Give them silence. A challenge to you. Ask yourself, how many hours of your life have you wasted explaining yourself to people who were never listening? How much energy have you given to people who didn't deserve it? How many times have you chased validation from those who never intended to give it? Now imagine reclaiming all that energy. Imagine withdrawing your emotional presence, giving your silence as the only answer. Write it in the comments. My indifference is my revenge. Because revenge isn't anger. Revenge is absence. Revenge is silence. Revenge is becoming so untouchable that your enemies choke on the void you leave behind. The ruthless reality Machiavelli knew the truth. People are unsettled by what they cannot control, and nothing is harder to control than the man who does not care. Indifference is not cruelty. Indifference is clarity. It is choosing to spend your emotions as carefully as gold. While the weak react to every insult, the strong remain still. While the weak bleed for attention, the strong starve their enemies of it. And in the end, the world bows not to the loudest voice, but to the calmest one. Now that you understand emotional investment is the setup for manipulation and indifference is the weapon to break free, it's time to go deeper. Because silence alone is not enough. You must learn how to detach completely without losing your mind. Do you think you could walk away without explaining yourself? Could you embrace the silence that others fear? Let us know below. He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. Niccolò Machiavelli. The misunderstood concept of detachment. Most people confuse detachment with suppression. They think that to detach means to bury your emotions deep inside, to bottle them up, to force a fake calm while pressure builds within. That isn't detachment. That's self-destruction. True Machiavellian detachment is not about not feeling. It's about not acting foolishly because you feel. Suppression is weakness. Detachment is strategy. Suppression is when you feel rage and shove it down until it explodes in a moment you can't control. Detachment is when you feel the rage, observe it, and then coldly decide whether expressing it serves your purpose. Machiavelli warned that a ruler cannot afford to be ruled by his own emotions. To govern others, he must first govern himself. And if you cannot govern your inner storms, you will never command external power. Detachment in action. Real-time strategies. So how does a Machiavellian strategist practice detachment? 4 ruthless methods. Observation over reaction. When someone insults you, delays you, pressures you, stop. Don't react. Simply watch. They expect anger, guilt, or desperation. Give them nothing. Interrupt the story. Your mind will begin spinning tales. They disrespected me because I'm weak, or they ghosted me because I'm not enough. Cut the story. Replace it with interesting. Noted. Moving on. You're not here to decode disrespect. You're here to dominate outcomes. Disappear without guilt. When someone crosses a line, you don't owe them explanations, warnings, or closure. You vanish, and silence becomes the loudest punishment. Focus on mission, not emotion. Weak men are ruled by their feelings because they have no mission. A man with no mission will obsess over gossip, disrespect, or rejection. But a man with a purpose? He uses his feelings as fuel, not chains. Ask yourself, does this serve my mission or drain it? If it drains, it dies. Modern example, relationships. Consider the modern dating world. One man argues endlessly with his partner, always demanding explanations, always chasing closure. He invests his entire emotional stability in someone else's responses. The Machiavellian man, on the other hand, does not beg, does not chase, does not cling. He observes, he notes patterns, and if the situation no longer serves his mission, he leaves without debate. That silence, the absence of begging, the absence of reaction, is what makes him unforgettable. The power of emotional minimalism. You don't need to explain everything. You don't need to respond to every accusation. You don't need to demand to be understood. Detachment is freedom from emotional slavery. It allows you to save your energy for battles that matter. It gives you clarity, and clarity is terrifying to those who live in chaos. Because when you stop reacting emotionally, you stop being readable, and when you stop being readable, you start being feared. Transition from detachment to warfare. But detachment alone is not enough. The world isn't just about protecting yourself from manipulation. It's about dominating the field of power. And in every room, every meeting, every conversation, you are engaged in subtle warfare. The question is, will you enter that war armed with silence and strategy, or will you walk in defenseless, waving your emotions like a flag for all to exploit? This brings us to the next Machiavellian law. Emotionlessness is power in social warfare, the cold weapon of stillness. We live in a world addicted to reactions. People chase validation, attention, applause, recognition, and in that chase, they reveal themselves. But the Machiavellian strategist is different. He understands that in social warfare, the one who doesn't react wins. When others scramble to defend themselves, he sits in silence. When others fight to be understood, he lets the noise pass. When others demand attention, he withholds his presence. And that cold silence, unshaken, unreadable, becomes dominance. Historical example, fear versus love. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Most misinterpret this as advocating cruelty. But Machiavelli was describing psychology. Fear comes from unpredictability. Love comes from consistency. If you are emotionally consistent, always reacting, always explaining, you may be liked, but you will never be feared. And without fear, your influence evaporates. But when you are unreadable, when people cannot predict your reactions, they adjust themselves around you. They tread carefully. They second guess. They respect. That is fear. That is control. Modern example, workplace power. In the workplace, emotional people get trapped. They over-explain during meetings. They rush to defend themselves when criticized. They argue when ignored. The Machiavellian professional, however, remains still. He answers criticism calmly or not at all. He speaks rarely, but with precision. He reveals nothing of his emotional state, and in doing so, he controls the tempo of the room. Colleagues fear disappointing him, not because he shouts, but because his silence is unbearable. The chessboard of social warfare. Every conversation is a chess match. The emotional player makes his moves obvious, flinching, defending, chasing. The strategic player sits back, observing, conserving energy, waiting for the opponent to overextend. And here's the paradox. The less you care, the more control you have. When someone insults you and you smile, you win. When someone ghosts you and you don't blink, you win. When someone tries to guilt you and you walk away mid-sentence, you win. Because the battlefield is not their words. The battlefield is your inner world, and the man who rules himself cannot be conquered. A challenge to you. Look at your life. Who tests your boundaries? Who provokes you, not out of love, but out of habit? Who tries to guilt you, knowing you'll explain yourself endlessly? Now imagine responding with silence. Imagine giving them no emotional access. Imagine the shock when they realize their old tricks no longer work. Write it in the comments. I am unreadable. I am unshakable. Because the man who controls his emotional display controls the entire social field. The ruthless reality. This is the truth of Machiavellian social warfare. Words don't make you powerful. Silence does. Reaction doesn't give you strength. Indifference does. The rulers of history didn't dominate by being louder than everyone else. They dominated by being colder, calmer, and unreadable in the storm. The same is true for you. In the chaos of life, the calm mind wins. In the noise of society, the quiet presence dominates. The question is, will you be the man who flinches or the man who doesn't blink? Now that you've mastered detachment and learned the weapon of emotionlessness, it's time to defend your fortress, because what you give your attention to, you empower, and guarding your energy is the next cold rule of Machiavelli. Men should be either treated generously or destroyed because they take revenge for slight injuries, for heavy ones they cannot. Niccolò Machiavelli, guard your energy. Like a fortress, coldness is not about cruelty, it's about conservation. Think of your energy as the walls of a fortress. Within those walls lie your time, your focus, your mission, your future. Outside those walls swarm countless people and distractions, all demanding access. Friends who drain you, enemies who bait you, strangers who waste your attention. And every time you react emotionally, every time you explain yourself, every time you give away your focus, you lower the drawbridge, you let invaders in. Most men spend their lives with the gates wide open. They pour energy into meaningless arguments, gossip, and petty rivalries. They hand out emotional attention like free coins tossed into the street. And then they wonder why they feel exhausted, used, broken. The answer is simple. What you give emotion to, you empower. The Machiavellian view of energy. Machiavelli himself knew this. He never wasted words on fools. He never poured energy into causes that could not strengthen his position. He understood that every ounce of attention was currency, and only a fool spends currency where no return exists. The strong man guards his energy with coldness. He speaks less, reveals less, responds less. He leaves others confused, unsettled, guessing, not because he lacks feelings, but because he spends them as carefully as gold. This is why coldness is not weakness, it is control. And control in a world of chaos is the rarest form of power. Modern example, the trap of attention. Consider the endless debates on social media. People waste hours defending themselves to strangers, trying to win arguments that don't matter, explaining themselves to people who never cared. What's the result? Nothing gained, energy lost. Now imagine a man who doesn't play that game. He doesn't defend himself. He doesn't explain. He doesn't argue. He withholds attention entirely. Suddenly, he becomes mysterious. His absence is louder than their words. That's how a fortress works. You don't defend every wall. You make the enemy exhaust themselves trying to get inside while you preserve your strength. Historical example: cruelty used wisely. Machiavelli wrote that cruelty, when used wisely, can be more merciful than misplaced kindness. What did he mean? That sparing your energy for the worthy few and cutting off the rest without apology is not heartlessness, it's wisdom. Because the man who gives his attention to everyone values no one. Coldness filters. It shows who truly values you and who only valued access to your energy. A challenge to you. Ask yourself, how much of your life have you wasted on people who gave you nothing in return? How many hours have you poured into defending yourself, proving yourself, or chasing the validation of those who never deserved it? Write this down. If it drains me, it doesn't deserve me. Your attention is not free. It is earned, not owed. Guard it like a fortress. Transition: the psychology of obsession. And here is where the game flips. Because once you begin guarding your energy, once you go cold, something strange happens. They begin to chase you. The paradox of obsession. Here lies the Machiavellian paradox. The less you care, the more they chase. When you give people your time, your reactions, your emotional energy, they take it for granted. They assume it will always be there. But the moment you withdraw, the moment you stop reacting, the moment you stop caring, they panic, they spiral, they become obsessed. Why? Because humans crave validation like oxygen, and when it disappears, they suffocate. The psychology of scarcity. Psychologists call this the scarcity principle. The less available something is, the more it is desired. When you were always available, always responsive, always explaining, they grew comfortable. They saw you as predictable. But when you cut the supply, you create scarcity. Your silence becomes a vacuum they cannot tolerate. They start replaying conversations, rereading old messages, overanalyzing your absence. Did I do something wrong? Why haven't they responded? Do they hate me? Their mind becomes the battlefield, and you don't even have to fight. Historical example: Machiavelli's void. Machiavelli noted that power often comes not from what you give, but from what you withhold. A ruler who suddenly withdraws his presence creates panic. People scramble to fill the void. They begin to obsess. Not because they love him, but because they fear losing control over him. This principle is timeless. Even in your personal life, the moment you withdraw, you create a power vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. So, they chase. Modern analogy: relationships. Look at modern relationships. The one who chases, who over-explains, who constantly reaches out, becomes weak. The one who withdraws, who withholds, who remains scarce, becomes magnetic. Not because of cruelty, but because of scarcity. Attention becomes valuable only when it is rare. This is why Machiavellian detachment is not just about protecting yourself. It's about creating leverage. Silence is leverage, the power of absence. Never forget this. You don't create obsession through attention. You create it through absence. You don't become unforgettable by being constantly available. You become unforgettable by being scarce, silent, and cold. Absence haunts more than presence ever could. A challenge to you. Think of someone in your life who used to drain you, someone who thrived on your reactions. Imagine withdrawing completely. Imagine their confusion when you give them no closure, no explanation, no emotional access. That silence will echo louder than any words you could ever speak. Write it in the comments. I give nothing for free, not even my attention. Because obsession is not created by generosity. It is created by scarcity. The ruthless reality. Here is the paradox. The moment you stop caring, they start obsessing. Not because they value you more, but because they can no longer control you. And in that loss of control, they spiral. That is your victory. That is psychological warfare. Now that you've learned how to guard your energy and weaponize absence, it's time for the next evolution. Because true Machiavellian mastery is not just in the short-term battle. It's in the long game, and that long game is built on emotional distance. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. Niccolò Machiavelli. Emotional distance. The long game. Most people play for the short term. They trade their emotional energy for crumbs of approval, a moment of validation, a fleeting sense of connection. But the Machiavellian strategist plays the long game. He does not need applause. He does not crave constant reassurance. He does not beg to be liked. He positions himself for lasting influence, not temporary affection. This is where emotional distance becomes the most powerful tool. Distance does not mean withdrawal from the world. It means positioning yourself above the games of others. It means no longer negotiating your value. It means watching with clarity while others drown in their feelings. When you detach from needing to be accepted, you stop bargaining for attention. You stop justifying your existence. You stop lowering yourself to meet the standards of people who cannot even reach yours. The Machiavellian advantage. In negotiations, the calmest man always wins. In relationships, the one who can walk away holds control. In life, the person who can remain emotionally unmoved is the one others adjust themselves around. This is the Machiavellian truth. People respect what they cannot easily access and fear what they cannot predict. And when you combine scarcity with distance, you become untouchable. Historical example. The long-term player. Consider the Medici family, Florence's legendary rulers. They mastered not only wealth and force, but distance. They never gave the people full access to their intentions. They created mystery, scarcity, and aura around their decisions. And because of that, their influence lasted generations. Not because they were always liked, but because they were strategically feared, respected, and remembered. Contrast this with weaker rulers who lived to please the mob. They fell quickly because emotional dependence on approval is the fastest path to ruin. Modern analogy. Leaders and distance. Look at modern leaders. The ones who constantly defend themselves, constantly react to criticism, constantly try to be liked, become exhausted and disrespected. They trade authority for popularity. But the leaders who maintain distance, the ones who don't reveal everything, who remain calm in storms, who refuse to explain themselves to every critic, become magnetic. The less accessible they are, the more their presence commands respect. This is the psychology of distance. The more you hold back, the more they lean in. A challenge to you. Who in your life has too much access to your emotions? Who do you constantly explain yourself to, chase after, or justify your actions for? Now imagine cutting that access. Imagine holding your silence. Imagine becoming scarce, distant, cold. That is the beginning of long-term power. Write it in the comments. I trade emotions for elevation, because you are not here to win approval. You are here to build empire. The final evolution, from emotion to empire. This is the 9th and final law of coldness. The transformation from being ruled by emotion to ruling through strategy. From being a servant to feelings, to being a master of outcomes. The evolution begins when you stop chasing closure, when you stop wasting words on fools, when you stop begging to be understood. It reaches completion when you realize you don't need to be heard, you don't need to be liked, you don't even need to be loved. You need one thing: power over yourself. Because once you master your inner world, no external force can shake you. The empire within. This is not about becoming robotic. It is about becoming sovereign. It is about building an empire within yourself so solid that no insult, no rejection, no manipulation can break it. Emotion is volatility. Detachment is leverage. Silence is strategy. Machiavelli understood this. He didn't seek to be loved. He didn't explain himself endlessly. He didn't defend himself against every critic. He studied weakness, ruled above it, and left a legacy that outlived him by centuries. You must do the same. The ruthless reality. The weak will call you cold. They will call you heartless. They will say you've changed. But they misunderstand. You are not cold because you lack a heart. You are cold because your heart is too powerful to be handled carelessly. You are not distant because you fear connection. You are distant because you know connection. Without control is slavery. And you are not cruel because you withhold. You are strategic because you know that giving yourself freely destroys value. Modern example. From victim to weapon. Think of the man who spends his nights overanalyzing texts, replaying conversations, desperate for closure. He is a victim of emotion. He is predictable, weak, and easily controlled. Now think of the man who receives silence, disrespect, or manipulation, and answers with indifference, who disappears without guilt, who does not chase, does not explain, does not bend. That man becomes feared. That man becomes respected. That man becomes untouchable. That man builds empire. A challenge to you. Are you ready to become that man? Are you ready to abandon the need to be understood and embrace the strategy of being unreadable? Write it one final time in the comments. Emotion doesn't rule me. I rule everything, because this is your evolution. From being a pawn on the emotional chessboard to becoming the player who moves unseen. The call to action. If you're ready to take the next step into Machiavellian psychology, if you're ready to stop being manipulated and start controlling the game, subscribe to this channel, join the community of those who see the world as it truly is, not as we wish it to be. This isn't motivation. This isn't comfort. This is war, and it begins within. The final word. Let them call you cold. Let them call you ruthless. Let them say you've changed. Because in the end, you will not be remembered for how much you cared. You will be remembered for how untouchable you became. And that is the art of empire.